Also, some people are already doing it.
The poll?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Perfect. Yeah, for everybody waiting, there's a poll that should pop up, and it's just a couple of quick true false questions that April will address in her presentation. So if you could fill that out, that would be awesome. Hello to everybody that is saying hi in the chat. It's great to see everybody coming in from lots of different places. We already have 41 people in here, which is awesome. And some people from BC and the States as well, which is very
great.
cool. 40 now. For everybody who is not from Alberta, if you could take a moment and write in the chat where you are from, that would be really cool to see. So I know we have, yeah, a bunch of Alberta people, but I advertise to some other Facebook pages. So it'd be cool to see where everybody's from.
Awesome.
Awesome. Lots of BC people so far, which is great. And if you don't see the poll, it might be because you're not updated to, wow, we have an Arizona person here. That's cool. If you don't see the poll, it might be because you're not updated to the newest version of Zoom, which is all right. Otherwise, you should be able to sort of mouse over the top or the bottom where your menu is, and there should be an option to pop up the poll. But if you don't see it, it's not a big deal. All right, I think we're good to get started then. All right, so we'll get rid of this. Perfect. All right, so I will introduce myself. Thank you everybody for coming. My name is Jessica. I'm the president of the Alberta Horse Trials Association and communications chair as well. And we've been putting these educational webinars on for 3 years, I think now, and we've had April several times. And she's always been super educational, and we've had a really great turnout for all of them, which is why we had her back, which is great. And I'd also like to welcome Kathleen Ziegler. She's also on the Alberta Horse Trials Association, and she is our high performance chair. And high performance, in conjunction with the AHTA, is sponsoring this webinar. So we are very thankful for that. And I think we're good to get started. I will stop sharing my screen. And then I will let April share hers. I will
find mine. Okay. Okay, I've got this poll in the way.
Yeah, and again, for anybody with the newest version of Zoom, there's a poll that should pop up, or if you mouse over your menu, it should pop up. And anybody who is not from Alberta, if you can put in the chat where you're from, that would be awesome to know.
Okay. So do you want me to start, Jessica?
Yeah, you can go ahead, introduce yourself and take it away.
Sure. Well, hi, I'm April Clay. I am a former competitive rider turned a psychologist, and I do a lot of sports psychology work out of my private practice, as well as trauma work and rehabilitation psychology. So thanks, Jessica and Kathleen, for having me back again, because you always have such a great turnout. And it's always such a good crowd, such great questions. So I'm really looking forward to tonight, which is about finding out if you are a mindless rider or not. So let's get to it. But actually, first I'm going to ask you to, whoops. Oh, no, I can't. Okay. Because we're going to dive right into things with our little poll, our little mindfulness IQ test. Not too painful, just for simple true or false questions. And maybe, Jessica, I'll give people a few minutes to find it, or I guess they can ask you in the chat if they can't find it, so that they can fill it out. I
Yeah,
can do
not
all four
everyone,
questions.
yeah, not everyone will have it. It's only if you have the newest version of Zoom.
Okay.
Yeah, so not everyone will have it, but can you see the
Okay.
results there?
Uh, do,
Or I can read them out too if you need.
oh, okay. Yeah, I've got it up. I can see we've got about 22. Maybe if, are there any questions in the chat, which I don't have open, Jessica, about
No questions
getting
yet.
at it?
Yeah,
Okay.
not any questions in the chat. It does say 100% of the people have answered, so that's everybody who can see the
Oh,
poll.
okay. Oh,
Yeah, so I
awesome.
think we're probably good to go ahead.
Okay, well, let's get to our first question then, which is sorry, then I have to move the screen. Mindfulness means having cleaning or clearing your mind of thoughts, true or false. And it looks like we have false at 70% and true at 30%. So this is going to be interesting. So the answer here, in fact, is false. So the reason I'm doing this is because there are a lot of myths and misconceptions out there about mindfulness and about mindfulness-based practices and sport psychology practices. So I thought we would take a look at this first. And this is one of the popular ones that people feel like it's very intimidating because they have to clear their mind of all of their thoughts. And that's not true. Because mindfulness involves being aware of the present moment, and that includes your thoughts. So no, you don't have to clear your mind of thoughts. You're going to have to do something else with your thoughts, which we're going to talk about a little bit later in the webinar. But let's move on to question number 2, which is mindfulness is the same as meditation. And this one's even more, we got 88% at false and 13% at true. And the answer is false. So again, a lot of people tend to wrap these two together, but mindfulness is actually a quality. So it's a state of being. It's about being present in the moment. And whereas meditation is a practice, so you can certainly have mindfulness meditations where you are practicing mindfulness in a formal way, but the two are not the same. Okay, you guys are doing great so far. Number 3, mindfulness is relaxation. Oh, this one is a little bit closer here. We've got 44% at true and 56% at false. So mindfulness is relaxation. And this one's false. As you're probably going to come to understand tonight, that mindfulness is not always a relaxing practice. Sometimes with some of the mindfulness-based activities, a byproduct is that you become more calm and relaxed and clearer in your thoughts, certainly, but sometimes mindfulness can be a little bit uncomfortable as well. So mindfulness and relaxation are not the same thing. Okay, and our last question. You should be mindful all the time. And this one that's interesting. It's also split fairly evenly, 54% at true and 46% at false. So saying that you should be mindful all the time is false. That's kind of like asking yourself, I should be focused all the time. And that's just an impossibility for us humans. We're not able to be mindful all the time. We are going to lose focus. We are going to become mindless, so to speak. And also there are times when we are going to want to have distraction in our lives, and that's not necessarily a bad thing at the appropriate time. So no, we don't have to be mindful all the time, just at some more helpful times, as we'll discuss, like being on the back of a horse, of course. Okay, well, I will just close off this poll. And let's get on to a definition, because I find that there are certainly a lot of different definitions of mindfulness and lots of misconceptions floating around the internet. Sorry, I'm just trying to get rid of this poll that keeps popping up.
I've ended it, so it should end.
Okay, it just popped up again. So sorry. So two definitions that I really like, one by John Kabat-Zinn. So for any of you that have tapped into any mindfulness practices and reading, you probably are well aware of him. He is one of the pioneer researchers and practitioners in mindfulness. And his definition is the awareness that arises from paying attention on purpose in the present moment and non-judgmentally. And then my other favorite definition of mindfulness is by Ellen Langer. And she is also, she's a social psychology professor at Harvard University who's done extensive research and writing about mindfulness. And her definition is the process of actively noticing new things, which puts you in the present. It makes you more sensitive to context and perspective. It's the essence of engagement. So in coming up, I'm not sure what, I think Siri was just talking to me. Sorry, talking about distractions. So in coming up with my own definition of what mindful riding is, I like to combine those two definitions by those practitioners and researchers. So mindful riding can be defined as being fully engaged in the present moment, in the experience of communicating with your horse. It has the quality of being open to what is happening, actively taking in information without judgment. Mindfulness improves focus, concentration, and our ability to let go of negative thoughts that can affect our performance. And those are some of the things that the research bears out in sports psychology, mindfulness-based strategies. And the research is ever increasing in this area. And lastly, true connection or attunement cannot happen without being present. Connection is the foundation for horse sport, or so I believe, as probably a lot of you do as well. Probably one of the most, the kinds of sports where it's most important and crucial that you be present. So what we're gonna, the goal for my goal for tonight is, I can't cover all of mindfulness. For example, we're not going to talk a lot about the without judgment part, which is probably the hardest part of being mindful, but we're going to concentrate more on awareness and keeping that awareness and looking at some different exercises that can get you started in this area. And yeah, get you on to a little bit of a mindfulness practice of your own and trying that out. So our first look at, you could be a mindless rider if your coach often yells at you to get out of your head. And I don't think we need to do a poll on this. I'm going to guess that a lot of you have heard your coach say this. I certainly know that when I was riding competitively, that was something that I heard a fair amount. And so what happens to us, of course, when we are not present in the moment often is that we are trapped in our heads, so to speak, meaning that we are trapped with our thoughts, unfortunately, usually negative thoughts, anxious thoughts, ruminating in our minds. And so when that happens, when we're trapped in our head, of course, the downside is that we become more and more disconnected from our horse. And that has all kinds of implications, as you probably all know, for learning, for performance, and also for safety, right? Because the more often you are disconnected from your horse, actually, the more unsafe you are. And, we know that horse sport carries certain risks with it. So that's another reason that mindfulness is an important skill in horse sport. Okay, so how do you start to learn to climb out of your head and back into the here and now and back into your environment and into your horse? My favorite exercise, and it's a simple one, deceptively simple, that a lot of you might have heard of, is the 5-4-3-2-1 exercise. Simple but incredibly effective, not just in sport, but in trauma as well. And this one we're going to take a little experience with. So we're going to do a little exercise together with this. So the 5-4-3-2-1 exercise is basically what I usually call it is taking a trip through your senses, because it is about connecting with your senses in the present moment. But before we get into that, I am going to be just slightly make you a little bit uncomfortable, and I swear this is the only time I will do this tonight. But I actually want you to climb into your head right now with the last and worst memory that you can remember about one of your rides. So maybe it's a bad lesson you had last week, or maybe it's something that you've been a problem that you've been unable to fix and ruminating about. But actually, I want you to climb into your head with whatever that horrible thing is, sorry again, and allow the images to come of that problem, and also allow those sensations in, those feelings that come with that problem, the thoughts, anything that starts to come up for you in remembering that nasty memory. And then once you've got a handle on that, I just want you to take a couple of, I want you to notice a couple of things. And one is I want you to rate your anxiety and stress level right now after bringing this up into your head on a scale from 1 to 10, 1 being the least and 10 being the most stress and anxiety that you now feel. So are you at a 5 or 6, 7, 9.5? Whatever it is, just give yourself a rating. And I also want you to notice what has changed with respect to sensations in your body, feelings, thoughts. Just make a mental note of that, okay? And now we are going to try to jump from this point to going into this exercise. So this is a bit of an experiment for you right now. And so this exercise very simply goes like this. So wherever you are right now in your living room or wherever you happen to be, I want you to look around and choose 5 things that you can see and just describe them to yourself. So if it's, I see a lamp with a brown shade, I see a picture of a horse and the horse is white, and whatever your eyes land on, 5 things, just describe them to yourself. And then next, I want you to pick out 4 things that you can either touch or feel. So that could be like touching, well, even like, what does your shirt feel like right now? Or, what are your toes warm or cold as you press them into the floor? What is that sensation like? What is it like to roll your shoulders back, to lean back into your chair? You can touch anything that's around you. Only rule is that it's got to be in the here and now. And then we're going to go to our next sense, which is naming 3 things that you can hear. So I can hear, for example, some of the din of the traffic outside. I can hear the tick of the clock beside me. And I just heard my dog snore. So 3 things you can hear. And then this one might be a little bit more challenging, 2 things that you can smell. So if there's anything around you that you want to pick up and smell, or you can just ask yourself, what does this room smell like right now? And then finally taste. And if you have something with you, like if you have some water, you have some coffee, whatever it is, you can take a sip. Or you can just ask yourself, what does the air taste like in this room? Or what kind of taste, how would I describe the taste in my mouth? Okay. And now that we're done this exercise, and I don't know, Jessica, can we actually do a really quick poll? And all I want to know is how many people experienced a change in their anxiety level and experience some sort of shift towards feeling more calm after experiencing some of that anxiety of climbing into your head with that problem. How did this exercise work for you? Did you experience any change? So can we do that quickly, Jessica?
I don't know if I can add it in right now, but if we could do, like, everybody should have, I think if they click on the top right of their video, they should have an option to raise their hand, or you could type in the chat.
Okay.
Oh, several
So,
hands
yeah,
going up so far.
raise your hand if you experienced any kind of change, or if you have something to say in the chat, you can do that as well. Oh, in the chat. Oh, interesting. Okay.
Oh yeah, lots of hands. Yeah, comment in the chat is taste seemed to bring me into the moment. Another comment was very quickly began to relax, and definitely, yeah, lots of hands up. If anybody else wants to type in the chat.
Wow. Awesome.
Yeah, definitely came down after doing that exercise. Another comment was felt more focused.
Okay.
This is some great responses. Oh, so many hands. This is, yeah.
Okay, and we'll probably get to discuss this a little bit more when we get to the question period.
Yeah.
But I'm really happy to see that you I had some experience there with this. It's a simple exercise, like I said, deceptively simple, but its ability to help bring you back to the here and now, which, you know, incidentally, what happens when you bring your senses back, for example, into the room, you know, assuming there is not like a bear in the room or something dangerous in the room, what happens is your nervous system, without you even thinking about it, your nervous system registers, you know what, that the things are okay, right? And you start to distance yourself from those thoughts and tune into the present. So that's the power right there of mindfulness. It's just a little sample. I will say, like with this exercise, it's really interesting to repeat it a few times. So to go through several cycles of it, and each time that you do it, trying to pick new things in the room, like for your senses to pick up on. It's really interesting to see the change when you do it repeatedly. So that's one exercise that you can do unmounted very easily. And next, another way to start to climb out of your head, and in this case, into your horse, is an exercise that I call mindful grooming. So I think for a lot of people, whoops, sorry about that. You know, when you go out to ride, you're in a rush, and I think we're all guilty of this, right? You brush your horse in a hurry, and not, you know, even really kind of taking them in. I kind of compare it to trying to get a small child out the door on time to school, right? Like kid doesn't want to go, but you're rushing around. You just, you know, you've got to get to the outcome. You've got to get them dressed, and you've got to get them out the door. And, you know, so sometimes it's like, I've got to get my horse tacked up, and that's it. I've got it. I'm late for my lesson. And the thing that's missed, though, in the process is the chance to connect. So when you practice mindful grooming, this is about slowing down and accepting that this is going to be an experience, for one thing. It's not a performance, and it's not about the outcome, although of course you want a tacked up horse at the end of it. And to begin by taking in your whole horse. So kind of standing back, taking a look at their body language, what are their ears doing? What's their tail doing? Like how do they seem to be today? And then starting in slowly with some brushes and switching brushes and experimenting with different brushes and different levels of pressure. Some people like to start with their hand before a brush, and just getting a sense again of, how your horse is responding today. And then what you intermittently do in this process is switch your awareness to yourself and check in about, okay, how am I feeling today? What's going on? What thoughts am I noticing? What tension levels? What emotions? And so kind of switching back and forth and not panicking again if you become disengaged and your thought, flies off into, geez, I hope today's lesson is going to go well, or whatever that stray thought is. Know that you can return to the grooming simply by accessing one of your senses. So it might be stopping even to run your hand over a brush yourself, right, to bring yourself back, or choosing a different brush, getting into a rhythm with your grooming, doing something. Sometimes it can help to do something really novel. So trying a brush that you haven't before, or starting with a different area of the horse, because novelty can help you come back into the moment. And as you're doing this, you're gradually getting a sense of, or you're being open to the awareness of what is the connection like between you, right? And do you feel in sync? Do you feel out of sync? And really, so who's there today in this partnership? So I think that both rider and horse, every day is a different day, right? And part of, I think, horse sport and of course about being mindful is being able to show up and ride the horse that you have today with the you that you have today. Not that you can't change any of that, but that certainly, our horses are different every day. So I have a lot of clients who like to use this as a pre-ride routine, as a way of starting to come into connection with their horses, instead of, like I said, and of course you have to leave yourself enough time, instead of rushing into the riding process and getting too focused on the outcome, which is, granted, it's what we tend to do in our culture and in sport a lot of times, is focus too much on those outcomes. So that is an exercise you can also get started with. Okay, you could also be a mindless rider if you often have that left behind feeling. And I think it's painful just looking at this for probably not for non-horse people as much as it is horse people, because we know exactly what this feels like. I love this photo because, we're not sure what the rider's doing, but horse actually looks pretty okay, happy with himself or herself. But yeah, there's nothing worse than that left behind feeling, that being out of sync, not with the motion. And as we all know, that happens a lot when we're in our heads or we're not present. So to be spend a little bit less time being left behind and being out of the motion, you can start to engage in what I call a sensory ride. So this is really applying the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, starting to apply that to a ride. Starting small, because if you expect yourself again to, spend an hour flatting your horse and being mindful that entire time, and then you're probably going to get frustrated with how many times your mind drifts. So just start small, start with 5 or 10 minutes and focusing again, just like you did in the room, but this time you're in the arena or you're outside. So you are connecting with what's in your environment and also with your horse, right? Because one of the things that you might see is your horse's ears, and one of the things that you might hear is your horse snort in relaxation, things like that. And when you lose connection, and we know that you will, because everyone does, this is an opportunity to start bringing it back, bringing back your focus, bringing back your attention to the present moment through your senses. And that can be any sense, right? Or some multiple senses. We know that, right, the two most important senses with riding horses are, being able to see where we're going and the track that we're following, what we're doing, and also feel, touch, feel. So how we're experiencing our horses. And through a simple exercise like this, you can start to notice, right, what senses are easier for you to connect through and what are more difficult, which is valuable information. Because let's say that you are at a horse show and you're really, really stressed, and you're recognizing that you are in your head and panicking and you want to get out, and you don't have time to do the full 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 exercise because you're minutes away from the in-gate. You pick your strongest sense, and that's what you connect to. And that's what you use as your gateway back into the present moment and back into calm. So there are obviously a lot more benefits to a simple exercise like this than I can name here. And but we're looking at, establishing, training your focus, and training your focus specifically through your senses, right? We're looking at starting to train yourself to be aware of, right, that connection while you're riding with your horse. So there's lots of different benefits, again, to a really simple exercise like this. And start small. Use it, again, you can use this as a sort of a pre-ride routine before your lesson, that sort of thing, to set yourself up to be more present and less in your head. And this idea of bringing yourself back, and you can say, bringing yourself back to your senses is first a process of noticing. So being aware that your mind has left your task or left your horse. And when I say accepting that, I don't mean, oh, yay, my focus is left, but more that, okay, I've noticed it, it's happened. And now my job is to reconnect back to my task and reconnect back through one of my senses, because where I want to end up is back in the present, where I have the best chance of influencing my ride for the better. Okay, so it's not about like some other strategies in horse sport that are, like, let's say, cognitive behaviorally based, where there's more of a question of, well, you need to change your focus, or you need to find out what was wrong with it. This is more of a going with the motion of things, expecting that, I am going to lose that focus sometimes, but I'm going to practice reconnecting. And that's the beauty, again, going back to those really simple exercises, that's really what you're training, is noticing and coming back. Okay. And another way you can start your ride in a more mindful way, and I've been recommending this particular pre-ride routine for a lot of years now, and a lot of riders really like it, and it's definitely can be a mindfully based pre-ride check, and that is to ask yourself what's in your bag. So asking yourself this, like, let's say just before you enter the ring, just as you get on, having some point where you do check this. So B stands for body. So just checking in. Okay. Where am I feeling tension, relaxation? Where's my body at today? Attitude. Is my mind on positive, negative, neutral thoughts, anxious thoughts in the future, thoughts about the past, where am I starting from, and goal or intention. So what's the purpose of your ride? So again, this is not so much about saying, okay, now I've got to change all this, but the first principle about mindfulness is that awareness, is like coming to where you are in the moment. And that actually gives you the opportunity to shift, because you're in the present, you're in a position to act. So that is another way that you can start, a more mindful ride. Okay, another, you could be a mindless rider if your coach often says, "What were you thinking?" and you don't know. Or you might ask yourself this question a lot, like, what was I thinking in there in the ring or in that lesson? And you don't know. And how can this be that we just can't be as connected with our thoughts as we like to be? Well, often we do want to, for one thing, avoid our thoughts. And when you are experiencing anxiety, for example, performance anxiety, other types of anxiety, and you are in your head, then it is hard to remember your ride, because most of what your focus is on actually is more survival based than riding. So that's why it's not a common thing, people to come out of the ring and like, I don't know, but I survived. But of course, you want to do better than that, and be more comfortable than that as well. So what does mindfulness say about your thoughts and your mind, and how this is supposed to work in sport? So one of the things that, again, mindfulness is all about awareness. So knowing where you are. So where is your mind, literally? So it's tough for us as humans. We have a bit of a tough gig, because we are I believe right now, maybe the only documented species who are able to mentally time travel, which means that we have the capability of thinking about the past. So like for this rider, yeah, I can think about last year and I really blew it at this show. I remember it well. Images coming up. I hope that doesn't happen. How can I prevent it from happening? And we also have the ability to travel into the future and think about what could be, or anxiously anticipate, usually, what could be. So we can what if ourselves for hours and hours if we wish to, or our minds can be in the present. And that's, of course, where in terms of sport, is going to be the most effective. And as well, for a lot of things we do in our day-to-day living, it is very, very helpful to be more present. So mindfulness is, again, it's a little bit of a different approach to our thoughts than some of the other interventions in psychology and in sports psychology, where, like I said, it's about trying to change your thoughts. One of the exercises, for example, in mindfulness, is to do what's called some basic thought watching. And okay, here's an example of an exercise that when you first start it is not going to be very pleasant, and an example of why mindfulness is not always relaxation, and it's not always pleasant and calming. So mindful thought watching is just kind of what it sounds like. And that is watching your thoughts go by. And it's helpful to think about, I usually say to people, think about your thoughts going by like on clouds, or on a teleprompter, or on a screen in front of you, or on your TV. Something like that, where you can actually visually see them from where you are, and you can just watch them. And at first, of course, what you're going to find is you're not going to want to look at these thoughts, because especially if you're in a negative state, like this rider, you're going to be looking at some negative thoughts, which are probably going to produce some physiological reactions and not very comfortable ones for you. That's okay. You need to persist, because what happens with this over time is that it helps you to get, it helps you to first realize that your thoughts are not you, and your thoughts are not automatically turned into action. Like, they are not, all powerful laws of the universe that as soon as you think them have to happen. We have tons and tons of thoughts every day that we never act on. Even right now, if you said to yourself, I can't make a fist, I can't make a fist, I can't make a fist, you can make a fist, right? So not all of our thoughts turn into action, and or they don't necessarily have that power unless we give it to them. And learning to separate yourself a little bit from your thoughts, very helpful in dealing with them, because what happens over time as you watch them, first of all, you do get to know your own thought patterns, which is helpful. You also over time start to be less reactive to those thoughts. So if at first those thoughts are really upsetting to you, you start to get into judgment, which is the one aspect of mindfulness that we don't really have time to get into today, is the non-judgmental part of mindfulness. But when you start to get into judging your thoughts, that's when you can really go in circles, right? Like, so I'm having this negative thought. Why am I doing that? I shouldn't be doing that. And pretty soon you're in a circle with your thoughts, and you're in your head, most certainly, and you've become really disconnected from what you're doing. So a simple exercise like this is a good place to start, with just getting to know your thoughts and getting that separation that's going to enable you down the road to do something different with your thoughts. And when I say something different, again, we kind of go back to this idea of, in the cognitive behavioral realm, they want you to, to name what that distortion is in your thinking, and then come up with a positive thought. And in mindfulness, it's about seeing the thought, recognizing the thought, knowing that we are always going to have, like, you can't kill every negative thought. That is absolutely impossible. There are always going to be negative thoughts coming. That's the way our brains are wired. We have a negativity bias. So, you kill off 5, you got 10 more coming. With the mindful approach, it's more about, again, recognizing the thought, seeing that it's there, and then redirecting yourself back to your task in the present moment, right? Reconnecting yourself with what you're doing in the moment, rather than trying to wrestle and change those thoughts, as we all know, can get pretty difficult and pretty frustrating. Another thing you can simply start practicing is what I call, like, checking your time zone on your thoughts. So before, we talked about we can be in the past, present, or future. This horse rider combination, the horse is in the present looking at the obstacle, and the rider is right entertaining all number of other kinds of thoughts, probably mostly future, anxiously oriented, right? So it is about recognizing, whoops, I've come out of my present time zone, and that's where I want to be. I don't want to be in the past. I don't want to be in the future. I want to be here right now, and helping that connect you back up with, again, some sense, going through your senses. Okay. And this one, which I think might be our last, you could be a mindless rider if you are human. So the fact of the matter is that we are all always going to be, to some percentage, mindless, mindful. The goal here, especially with your sport, is to see what you can do to increase your mindfulness, which is ultimately going to increase your connection with your horse, which is going to lead to improvements in performance. And as I said, another element of being more in the present is that you stay safer, right? When you think about it, one of the most, the times we are in most danger when riding is when we become disconnected, because that's when your horse decides to spook, do something, or something's going on with your horse and you don't register that and you're unprepared, is when you can get hurt. So practicing mindfulness, practicing staying with your horse can keep you a lot safer. And is it's a really good skill for those of you out there. And I know that there are a lot of riders that battle with fear at one time or another. And certainly as we get older, we experience, naturally we experience more fear, because we know that we're getting more fragile, or we have more responsibilities, we have kids, we have jobs to get back to, and we don't want to get hurt. So it's also a great skill to help you deal with performance and other types of fears. Okay, but when you're starting to incorporate this into your ride, I would encourage you to go slow, but know that there are a lot of potential benefits that the research is showing, and I think you are going to experience soon that will hopefully keep you going, just like you most of you had at least an interesting experience with that, the really simple 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 exercise, in helping you know what it's like to be in your head, and to be in your head with something that's really uncomfortable, and to climb out of your head and climb back into the present moment and find a sense of safety, or when you're on a horse, to climb out of your head and find your way back to your horse. Because, and this is another thing I strongly believe, is that every ride you have is a different conversation, right? It's a conversation, it's a partnership. It's going to change day to day. Yes, you get to know your horses. Horses are all different in their personalities, and lots of different variables go into that. But thinking as every ride is a conversation, and an important conversation, mindfulness becomes more important, because you want to be present for that conversation, just like you would want to be for an important conversation that you were having with a loved one, or at the office. You would want to be present. You would want to be doing things like making eye contact with that person and connecting with them, to ensure that you are going to have a reciprocal experience of both giving information and receiving information. And that is riding, right? So yes, there are lots of benefits, developing focusing and concentration skills. And I think that's evident, that you can see from, again, like even the simple exercise of choosing like one sense, let's say, for 10 minutes during your ride, and practicing bringing yourself back through that sense, is going to help you develop focus and concentration in perhaps a different way than you've tried before. It can certainly help you understand better what are the relevant things that you need to pay attention to with your ride. So that goes for both, of course, things that are in the present moment and relevant things in the present moment. So being able to anchor your focus into places in the present where it's going to most benefit your ride. Managing competition stress and other strong emotional states, like I just said, like fear. Mindfulness, I think, is a wonderful skill to help you with those kinds of challenges. Because anytime that you can bring yourself, right? Again, like stress has us in our heads. When you experience fear, when you experience performance stress, that your sympathetic fight or flight state is turned on, that means your mind is attuned to danger. And so what it's looking for in the environment is danger, not, again, go back to the relevant elements that you need to pay attention to with your ride. So one of the ways that these skills can help you with competition stress is to help bring you back to the present, into those relevant things. And as you experience with the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, likely calm you down. Certainly more enjoyment of your sport and a stronger bond with your horse, which I think gives every rider more confidence, regardless of what you're doing with your horse, is to have that stronger bond and to feel connected. And on that note, I just want to tell you a little bit about how I, back in the day, and of course you can see it's back in the day because this is a picture of me with my horse. Her show name was What's Lucky. And you can see how different the international ring looks. And of course, these were the days when the Rocky Mountain hunt ring was there with the scary bears and other things. And so it was a while ago. Yes, I'm dating myself. But it speaks to a really important day. It honestly comes down to that. When I was 13 and riding, when I could say now what I experienced was accidental mindfulness. So what happened was we had bought this horse, and she, not an easy horse, young horse, not a bad mover, not a great jumper, very short neck, very tense. And on this particular day, I was out riding by myself outside and very, very frustrated. And in my brain, in my teen brain, I was bemoaning the fact that I probably would never be competitive on this horse because I couldn't get her on the bit. She didn't jump well. How was I ever gonna, place? This is useless, blah, blah, blah. This went on for a while. And I got so frustrated that at one point I thought, well, I don't know what else to do. So I'm just gonna gallop around. We had a shavings track around the outside of the jumping ring at the time. And so I just started galloping, cantering around. And of course, after a while, and I dropped the reins, by the way, I just said, do what you want, because yeah, she was turning into a giraffe. And so she started to relax, she started to lower her head. And then I honestly don't know why I did this. I guess it was just sort of intuitive and out of curiosity, but I started experimenting with different levels of pressure. And started to figure out, like with rein contact, what she could tolerate and she couldn't, because she was a very sensitive horse. And so that was kind of interesting. I found out some things about her. And then I also, because she was getting more relaxed and I was feeling more connected with her, then I started experimenting with my body position and experimenting with different levels of pressure with my body and different ways of using my body. And honestly, after working on this on my own for a while, I did start to feel more connected to her. But the other great thing that happened is that because I felt so connected and with her, my eye for offense, like it just incredibly came up in accuracy. Like it was amazing, the difference. And So it all, at any rate, what it culminated in for me was this winning this junior hunter championship at Spruce Meadows, which was very meaningful to me because this was a young green horse. And like I said, a horse I never thought that I would place on, let alone win a championship on it. And then, during the whole entire week, we never won a class, but we were the most consistent. And I think that's owed to this accidental mindful experience that I had that helped me connect with her for who she was at the time and work with her instead of against her. And what it did for my ability to feel or stride, have an eye for a fence was it. And that's why it's such a memorable kind of standout, one of those days that you can't forget. So I just wanted to tell you that story to hopefully give you some inspiration to start experimenting with some mindfulness, incorporating it into your ride, regardless of whether you ride recreationally, competitively, whatever you are doing. These skills, especially in horsemanship, I think can bring you, like I said, so many benefits that I can't even describe them all right now. But I would say, going back to the starting slow, being patient, doing little chunks. And I would also encourage you to, write down the kind of observations that you have as a result of starting to incorporate these exercises. So, some people have a sport journal, or you can make up your own tracking sheet. If you want one, you can email me and I can actually send you one. But it's kind of interesting afterwards to reflect on, gee, what did I learn today from, how did that mindful grooming exercise, for example, influence my ride, etc. What did I learn today about, what my strongest sense was, etc. So yes, I hope that you go forward and start to incorporate this not only into your sport, but actually into your life, because these are just mindfulness-based strategies are just such awesome life skills as well. And to help you guys, I guess, get started. So everyone attending tonight gets $12 off, and I'm just putting the finishing touches on the online course, which is like a work at your own pace, video and text based. Should be launched Friday, if not Monday, but I will make sure that Jessica knows and notifies you. And then the other one that this coupon will work with is the other recent course I finished, which is Performing Under Pressure. Yeah, so something to get you started, I hope. So that makes the mindful riding this course, I believe, like $25, and the other one $35. But I'm hoping we have some good questions now, Jessica, so we could open up to that. And
Thanks, April. That was amazing. Oh, we already have a question in the chat. All right, Alana asks, I'm wondering if I can ask a question in regard to bag check-in. As I get older, sometimes when I check in with my body, I just feel tired or achy or no longer the spry individual I once was. I feel that as well. Suggestions to overcome this, or at least might make my body experience a bit positive.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to that and that's the part that, I didn't really have a chance to get into today about, the striving to be more non-judgmental in our approach to our thoughts and the things that we notice. And so, I hear you that it is tired, or it's hard, sorry, when you check in and you feel tired. So, but it's another thing to judge that, right? To say, well, I'm not who I was, or maybe I can't. And this is what this means, that I can no longer do what I can. So again, the difference with mindfulness is about noticing that thought and then being able to let go and come back to an intention or that you have for your ride, an anchor into the present moment, into your horse, into connecting with your horse, because that tiredness that you feel in the moment doesn't mean that you are going to need to feel that your entire ride, right? You're just noticing that that's where you are at the beginning. And that's the beauty of that noticing part, is if you can do that non-judgmentally, it's going to eventually enable you to have this skill of being able to shift into a more, and I wouldn't say so much positive or negative as I would a productive focus, to start thinking that way instead of positive or negative. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves. I think positive and negative are also judgments. And when it's always like, I have to be positive, that can be a lot of pressure. So I hope that answers that question a little bit for you. We got another one.
Somebody was just asking if this will be, or there will be access to this session after the Zoom. And yes, for everybody wondering, we're recording this and it will be uploaded to the AHTA YouTube, and we will email the link out to everybody. And Alana did say, thank you for that response. Gave me some great things to think about.
Oh, good. I'm interested to hear if we go back to that first exercise where, like you were saying, Jessica, there's a lot of hands raised about, yes, I experienced
We can go back up.
some changes. Does anyone want to talk about what they noticed? I'm curious.
I think the asking questions and getting the responses was a really good thing. We should do more of that. Like next time we do this,
Yeah,
with the poll, because
yeah,
we did. Like, I think it's super interesting. Oh, dang it. Let me just look at the big. Oh, when you were talking about the experience that somebody had, like the thing that went wrong, somebody had said, I practiced the wrong dressage test without knowing until the double bell after a beautiful center line.
oh,
And then the things you experienced, taste seemed to bring me into the moment. Very quickly began to relax, focus changed, brought me back to the moment pretty quick. Definitely came down after going through that exercise, feeling more focused, my focus changed. Hearing was mine. And then my hands were clenched into fists when I began, and at the end, my hands were opened.
wow. That's really powerful.
And it's like a bit different for everybody, for sure, which is very cool.
Yeah, and that we have different people are noticing that somebody said, hearing is and taste, was a strong sense. So we're all a little bit different that way, and learning that about yourself can be really, really helpful.
Yeah, there's a question. Sorry, a question here. Any thoughts for someone who doesn't feel anxiety, but still blanks out during their ride?
Yeah, so basically, when you have that experience of not necessarily feeling the anxiety, you are still in an anxious state, I will say, if you're blanking out, because that's more associated with, and actually in the performing under pressure course, I go into kind of asking yourself whether you are a fight, flight, or freeze. when you tend to get nervous. And so some people, like with the blanking out thing, is more associated with, right, freeze. So not being so overwhelmed that you can't think. So with that, I would say that the practice that you probably want to engage in is bringing your attention back to some anchors with your horse. And of course, this has to start like before you go to shows, if that's where you experience anxiety, or sort of in a place, like if the anxiety is with over fences, then you want to start on the flat, right? But at any rate, getting yourself to anchor into like cue words that bring you back to elements of your ride that you need to be paying attention to, so that you can unfreeze your mind, basically. So you can start to bring it back online and connect by anchoring into certain thoughts. So I would say experiment with that. And yeah, I'd like to hear how that goes, if you want to send me an email.
And for those who don't know, we did talk last year with April about performing under pressure. If anyone wants to see that, it is on our YouTube, and it was also really awesome. We have a few more questions in the chat. There's a comment. Thank you for permission to not force myself to be positive all the time. I'm going to aim for feeling mindfully neutral and chill.
Yeah, and I think, you know, that often is a pressure we don't acknowledge, is the whole pressure to be positive. And it exists outside of sport as well, that we expect ourselves to be positive and not to have negative emotions. Well, we're going to have them, and we're going to have negative thoughts. So again, you can get into a loop with yourself if you're, you know, every time you're negative or you're experiencing difficult emotions, that you judge that and say, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. So like you said, just aiming for a different construct, or aiming for effectiveness, it takes a lot of pressure off.
Another comment, you mentioned anchors. Would this tie into NLP?
Oh, so neuro-linguistic programming, which I'll say I'm not trained in, so I don't know exactly if it ties into the same thing. But when I talk about anchors in mindfulness, it's about anchors in the present moment. Things that you can, you know, just like when we did the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you're looking at things around your room and you're starting to experience your surroundings, you're anchoring yourself and your senses right into the here and now. So that's what I mean by anchors, and that you can use that also, right, at a show to calm yourself down, even if you are experiencing, let's say, you know, you're not competing, you're feeling nervous and you're trying to calm yourself down, that anchoring yourself in looking at a tree and experiencing a tree can do a lot, just to, again, to de-escalate that sympathetic nervous activity so that you can think a bit clearly again.
Another comment, risk of this exercise validating things that will scare your horse, like the I Spy game, and you begin to focus too much onto it. Do you ignore that sense?
Okay, I'm not completely sure what you're getting at. Do you want to unmute? Katie, do you want to sort of explain a little bit more? I'm just not sure.
Sure. It's, you know, if you're going through the 5, 3, 2, 1,
Yeah,
and you're looking around the ring, trying to get a sense of place, but you notice the garbage cans flapping, you notice, you become too like hyper aware. So yeah, you want to be in the positive in your surroundings, but not go overboard of how do you ignore certain things like that and not get too much into your head and think too much about the exercise.
Yeah, and that's why I say go slow with it for one thing, like not to, do it for an hour, but do it for 5 minutes. But, you can, it's an interesting question because you can look at, something flapping yourself and pay attention to that. Whether or not your horse spooks with that, or that's validating that that's scary, depends on a lot of things. Like, are you scared by it, and does that change your riding behavior, or is there something that is being expressed through that, looking at it, right? So it's very much like, if you have a nervous horse, it's not about ignoring what, I believe this is correct, about what is, escalating its anxiety. It's more about, so for example, if there's something in the corner of an arena, it's not that you're ignoring that. What you are anchoring into is riding the corner. And those are the relevant, and so everything that has to do with riding that corner are the relevant cues that you're focusing on, and that hopefully the message that starts to get transmitted to your horse through that is there's nothing there that, right, to be that alarmed about. Interestingly, I went to see a behaviorist about my dog a couple of years ago because during the pandemic, he got a lot more anxious. And, one of the things that she said to me is that, you can even, like, if your dog is, if you're going by and he sees another dog, across the street or whatever, and, you see the body language start to change, she suggested you can yawn. Because it's right, it's no big deal, and you keep focused on where you're going. So you're not making it's not that you're ignoring it, but what you're communicating, I guess, is that dog is nothing to be concerned about. It's like, yeah, it's okay. That makes sense. Good. Yeah, I know it's an interesting concept. Try and wrap your mind around.
Brooklyn has a question. She says, would setting a goal for a ride be more beneficial for keeping your mind in the present, or would it be something that would make your mind wander more? And how could you keep your mind in the present while trying to achieve that goal without wandering to the past or the future?
Yeah, I think you can certainly have a goal intention for a ride. So let's say, I want to work on improving transitions today, and you can still incorporate mindfulness into that, and should, because what happens with goals, again, with some people, is that they get so stuck on the outcome. So the danger of getting into your head with that goal might be, the first time your horse is not responding to you or something, and then you start thinking, well, I'm probably asking him wrong, or or some negative thought about the horse or something that starts to pull you into your head, and you start to lose connection with what you're doing. And so that's a way that focusing on the outcome of a goal can be something that pulls you into your head and disconnects you from what's happening. It's kind of like I was saying about that, get your horse tacked up at all costs, get your kid dressed out the door at all costs. Well, it is at all costs, because like with the kid, you have a dressed, clean kid in the car who's cranky and then doesn't want to go into school. So you've got the one outcome, but now you're backed up on the next one. So I don't know if that makes sense. that you can have both a goal and mindfulness at the same time, and actually you should, and it's the outcome that gets problematic and drags us into our heads.
Breckman says, yes, thank you.
Okay.
And a couple other comments. Yeah, totally makes sense. Thank you so much. So much wonderful information. I have a question from like a coach's perspective. If you have
Yeah.
somebody who needs to chill out and like practice some mindfulness, is there anything you would recommend for as far as like tips to help them see that they need to do this?
So what kind of like, what's the situation, I guess, a little bit more specifically, like?
If a person is just like, when you suggest things, they're like, no, I'm fine, I'm calm, I'm not nervous. Just, is there anything you would suggest as far as like things I could, or like any coach could say to the person to help them realize that they need to chill the F out and do some of these skills? And I think like, I don't know if I'm sure there's a few coaches in here. I'm sure we've all experienced a few of those kinds of people.
Yeah, the I'm fine
Yeah,
thing.
I'm totally fine. I swear I'm
Yeah.
fine. Yeah.
And you could start by asking the question of, how do you know you're fine? Like, and you can ask them questions about, so when you're fine, typically, how does your, how do you feel that in your body? What are your thoughts like? And what about when you're not fine? So trying to get a discussion going about a contrast,
Mhm.
and start to like, cluing into, and you can also say to them things like, well, you're telling me that you're fine, but what I notice is, so let's say you notice, I guess you're noticing some obvious signs that they're not okay, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So then you might say, well, I do notice that I think when you're nervous, let's say about this particular exercise, or when we start jumping, that your body tips forward. And I'm not sure if you're aware of that, but I really noticed that. So maybe let's try and create, more awareness by, sometimes I can tell you, or I might ask you, where's your body? Like what,
Mhm.
So something like that would be an entry point.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
No, that is very helpful. And I think it's just like skills that people have in the repertoire, or like coaches have in the repertoire. Yeah, of like, it's not just like students being like obstinate, or like they don't know, but just helping them be aware of
Yeah.
what they might be feeling and to acknowledge it, and then have skills to address it, which
Yeah.
is
But
what
the
this whole thing is about.
noticing, like
Mhm.
you said, it's really hard to get anywhere. As you said, if, you get the answer, I'm fine, but
Mhm.
you know that's not the case. So if you try and find some ways to, through questions and dialogue, to tap into that person's awareness of,
Mhm.
right, like let's say what their body does when they're nervous, or that sort of thing, then that can be really eye-opening, because I think someone just said, not being anxious, not knowing you're anxious is totally a thing, and it is, right? It's I mean, there's lots of different emotions we have as humans that, in when we look back, we're like, I didn't even realize that, that's
Mhm.
the way I felt then, or that was going on, or I was engaging in that behavior, or whatever. So which is another reason why, the awareness aspect of mindfulness can be so powerful. Takes work though.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like awareness is the first thing. If you're not aware of what's happening, you can't do anything to like improve it or fix it for sure.
Yeah, it's gonna stay in that zone of
Mm,
being unconscious. Yeah.
yeah, perfect. All right, I'm just scrolling through the rest of the chat. Yeah, not being aware having sorry, not being aware having oh wow, words are hard. I'm sorry. Not being aware of anxiety is a thing. These are great suggestions to get the writer into the present though. And then another comment is I change the focus and in regular conversation sort of use the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, but without saying I'm doing it. With kids, we use things like asking what candy they like and pretending to pick one and what color is it and what flavor is it, which is a great, yeah, that's a good idea.
Mhm.
Can do similar with adults, but maybe not so much imaginary. Yeah, lots of different
Yeah, you can
ways
get
to
very
address
creative.
it. Yeah, and you have to be, right? Like as a coach.
Yeah, which is fun.
hmm
Yeah.
Is there any other questions or anything from anybody? We'll give another minute or two in case anybody pops up with something.
I will send, Jessica, I will send you. So I'm probably going to say, just to be safe, that Monday, the mindfulness course will open, just so I don't. Although you can, I will try and set it up. You can pre-purchase it, but the code will be valid for about a week, I think it is. And you can go in right now with the code for the performing under pressure. That's all fine. But on Monday, Jessica, what I'll do is I'll send you the handout that day, and so that you can send it. Like, would that be okay to everyone
Cool.
that attended, and just confirming that the course is open?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna send out the link to the replay of this because we're recording it.
Oh, good.
So that
Yeah.
would be perfect to send that out at the same time.
Okay.
For everybody who like, thank you everybody for attending, but I know there was a lot that couldn't for whatever reason. So that would be
Yeah.
awesome
And oh, and also Jessica, just if you could save the chat for me, I think you can do that,
I think so.
just
Yes.
so I can see all the questions and things.
Mhm.
That would be awesome.
Yes.
And I guess I'll just say that I really want to thank you, Jessica, again for doing a great job of moderating and organizing all of this. And thank you, Kathleen and the AHTA for doing this. I think it's great that you're offering educational opportunities to riding and opening it up to everyone. So thank you guys.
Yeah, it's mostly Kathleen doing this and Alberta High Performance, which is sort of a part of HTA. But no, we've had an amazing response to this the last few years. So I hope we can keep doing this.
Yeah.
And yeah, lots of thank yous in the chat. Oh, thanks, Kathleen, as well. Yeah, everybody, yeah, it looks like everybody appreciates these opportunities. We had a really good turnout. I think we had 50 people
Awesome.
attend, and there was 104 registered right before I popped in. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think if there's anything that, someone's thinking of for a topic for next time, to maybe let you or me know
Mhm.
that, there's something that they want to see.
Yeah. And we've done, for everybody watching, we've done several of these talks with April. So check out our HTA YouTube. And then April also offers many awesome courses that you guys should check out.
Thanks.
Perfect. So if there's no other questions, I guess we could probably sign off.
Okay.
Thank you, April, for everything. Thank you, Kathleen, HTA, Alberta High Performance. And we will see you guys in the next one, which will be March 14th. It will be a talk with Dr. Sarah Peterson about alternative therapies for your horse and how you know when you should maybe do them. And that information will be coming out very soon. All right. Thank you, April. Thank you, Kathleen.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.